The alarms rang through the station like the cries of a dying world. Red lights pulsed across the metal walls, bathing the long corridors in a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat slowing down. Outside the vast windows of the orbital station, fleets upon fleets of alien ships hung in silence. They did not fire. They did not move. Their weapons were powered and aimed, glowing faintly in the darkness of space, all pointed at a single human transport ship waiting in the docking bay. No words were spoken. No orders were shouted. The silence was heavier than any explosion, heavier than any war. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the final command. And in the center of it all, humanity stood on the edge of exile. The Galactic Council had made its decision. The humans were to be cast out. The announcement had been given hours earlier in the grand chamber of the council. The tall spires of alien leaders stood in their shimmering robes, their eyes cold and unblinking as they looked upon the single human delegate who stood before them. Their voices had been calm, but their judgment had been sharp as blades. Humans are too dangerous, one alien had declared, his voice echoing across the hall. Too unpredictable, another had added, her tone sharp with accusation. You are not like the others. You cannot be trusted. The human delegate had tried to argue. He had reminded them of the battles humanity had fought side by side with other species. He had spoken of alliances, of promises made, of lives saved. But his words had fallen into the void. The council had already decided. Humanity's place in the galaxy was over. Now, hours later, the human transport ship was being prepared for departure. Families rushed through the docking corridors, carrying the little they were allowed to take. Soldiers stood silently, their faces hard but their eyes filled with fire. No one cried out. No one begged. But the pain was written in every step, in every heavy breath. Outside the station, alien fleets kept their silent watch. To them, humans were no longer allies. They were threats that had to be removed. The galaxy had turned its back on them. But as the humans prepared to leave, whispers began to spread. Not all was as it seemed. Somewhere deep within the station, far from the docking bays, a different kind of meeting was taking place. A group of human officers stood in a dim room, the lights low, their voices hushed. The leader among them, a tall woman with a scar running across her cheek, leaned over the table where a holographic map flickered. They're not telling the full truth, she said quietly. This exile, it's not just about us. Someone else is being left behind. The others stared at her. One man, his hair streaked with grey, narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? The council has made it clear. We're the problem. The woman shook her head. No. The council is hiding something. I intercepted a message earlier. It wasn't meant for us to see. Another species, another people are being marked for silence. The council wants them erased. And if we leave now, they will have no one left to fight for them. Her words dropped like stones into still water. The officers looked at one another, their expressions grim. Humanity was already broken, already cast aside. Did they truly have the strength to fight for anyone else? But then the woman's voice cut through the doubt. We are humans. We don't walk away. Not from those who need us. Meanwhile, in the docking bay, children clung to their parents as they boarded the transport. Some looked out the tall windows, their eyes wide at the sight of the alien fleet surrounding them. A boy whispered to his father, "Why are they all pointing guns at us? We didn't do anything." The father pulled him close, his jaw tight. Because they are afraid of what they don't understand. The truth was, the galaxy did fear humans. In the wars of the past, humanity had shown something no other species possessed. A will to survive at any cost. A refusal to surrender even when outnumbered, even when doomed. Humans fought not for conquest, not for power, but for each other. That kind of defiance was something the council could never control. And so they called it danger. They called it chaos. They called it exile. Back in the grand chamber, the alien leaders spoke again, this time to each other, away from human ears. Their voices were low, their faces grave. It is done. They are leaving. Good. But we must ensure they do not discover the truth. They cannot know about the others. A silence fell between them, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of a secret buried under blood. As the human transport prepared to launch, the scarred officer from the hidden meeting walked through the crowded bay. Her eyes swept over her people, her steps steady. She carried with her the weight of the message she had intercepted, the secret that the council wanted hidden. She could not tell them yet, not here, not with so many ears listening. But soon, very soon, humanity would have to make a choice. Leave quietly, vanish into the darkness of exile, or stay and defy the galaxy itself. The engines of the transport roared to life. The sound vibrated through the metal floor, rising into a deep hum that shook the air. Families held on to each other, soldiers checked their weapons even though they knew they would not be allowed to use them. Every human aboard knew that once the ship left the docking bay, Earth and her people would be nothing more than a memory to the Council. But beyond the walls of the station, beyond the endless fleets that waited with cold patience, there was still the whisper of another people, another race abandoned to their fate. Humanity had always stood apart. Different. Unpredictable. Dangerous. And now, as they prepared to leave, that very nature might be the only thing that could save those left behind. The Council thought they had rid themselves of the human problem. They thought exile would silence the fire of Earth's children. But they were wrong. Because even in exile, humanity did not abandon the helpless. Even in exile, they did not walk away. And somewhere deep in the void, in a place the Council had marked for silence, voices cried out in the dark. Voices waiting for an answer. Voices that only humanity could hear. The transport's engines burned brighter, ready to break free from the station. The fleets shifted slightly, weapons glimmering in warning. The galaxy had cast them out. The galaxy had turned its back. But in that moment, the mystery began. Who were the ones left behind? And what would humanity risk to save them? The answer waited in the darkness of space, a secret the galaxy would kill to protect. And humanity was about to defy them all. The darkness of space stretched endlessly, a silent ocean broken only by the faint glow of distant stars. Inside the human transport ship, the air was heavy with the sound of engines humming and people whispering. Families clutched their belongings, soldiers sat in silence, and children pressed their faces to the windows, staring at the fleets that still surrounded them like predators circling prey. Everyone waited for the final order that would send them away forever. But then, something strange happened. In the middle of the static, through the endless background noise of space, a signal broke through. At first, it was so faint that most dismissed it as interference. Just a weak flicker, a meaningless pattern of sound. But one of the ship's operators, a young technician, leaned closer to her console. Her eyes narrowed. She knew this wasn't random. Someone out there was speaking. The sound came again, weak, broken, filled with static, but clear enough to understand. A voice, desperate and trembling, whispered into the silence. "Help us, please, if you can hear this, don't leave us here." The operator froze. She quickly ran the signal through the filters, clearing the noise, pulling out the fragments of the message. Again, the voice came, sharper now, heavy with fear. "They will kill us all. We don't have time. If the humans leave, there will be no one left. Please, do not abandon us." Her hands shook as she replayed the signal, as if repeating it would make it less real. But the truth was clear, the message was a cry for help. Someone out there was begging humanity not to go. The officer with the scar across her cheek was called to the deck. She listened carefully to the signal, her face unreadable, her eyes sharp. Around her, other officers exchanged uncertain looks. They had all expected resistance, maybe even insults from the Council. But not this. "Where is it coming from?" the officer asked in a steady voice. The technician pointed to her screen. "From a restricted system, one of the dead zones. The Council doesn't allow travel there. It's locked and sealed on all charts." The officer's expression darkened. "Of course it is." She knew what it meant. The Council wasn't just expelling humanity. They were covering something up. Another people were being erased, silenced in the shadows. And if humanity left now, no one would ever know the truth. The officer turned to her crew. "No one speaks of this outside this room. Not yet. But understand this, someone is out there. Someone the Council wants forgotten. And they just asked us for help." A heavy silence filled the room. For the first time since the exile had been announced, a spark of something stirred in the hearts of the officers. Anger. Purpose. A reason not to simply accept defeat. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the council chamber glittered with cold light as alien leaders whispered among themselves. The humans are leaving, one said, his voice calm but edged with relief. They must never discover the others, another replied sharply. If they know, they will resist. They will fight. The humans fight for everyone but themselves. That is their curse. And their danger, a third agreed. We must make sure they do not hear the voices from the shadows. But it was too late. Back on the transport ship, the officer replayed the signal again. Her eyes narrowed as she thought of the council's lies, of the families who trusted her to guide them, of the children who deserved more than exile. Humanity was being forced into silence, but in the silence of space, another people had reached out. The galaxy wanted them to turn away, to forget, to leave. But humans were not made that way. The scarred officer clenched her fists as the desperate words echoed in her mind. Don't leave us here. Somewhere in the endless dark, someone was waiting. And humanity would have to decide, obey the council and vanish quietly into exile, or defy them all and answer the call. The ship's engines roared softly, ready to fire. The fleets outside still kept their weapons aimed, ready to destroy the humans if they made the wrong move. The galaxy thought the humans were beaten. But the galaxy did not understand them. Because humans never abandoned those who asked for help. Not then. Not now. Not ever. And as the voice from the shadows faded into silence, the decision began to take shape. Humanity would not walk away. Engines hummed low across the human transport ship, a steady sound like the heartbeat of something that refused to die. The people inside moved with quiet purpose, still shaken by the exile, still heavy with fear, but now carrying whispers of a new secret. They had all felt it, that strange signal that reached them through static, like a ghost calling from the edge of nothing. Not everyone knew the details, but they knew something had changed. Humanity was not just leaving. Humanity was being pulled toward something hidden, something the council wanted erased. The scarred officer sat alone in a narrow command room, the glow of a single console casting pale light across her face. The intercepted message played again, quiet and broken, a whisper trembling through the static. Help us, please, don't abandon us. Her eyes closed for a moment. She could hear the fear in the voice. Not the kind of fear that came from war or battle, but the fear of being erased, of being forgotten. She knew that fear. Every human on this ship knew it now. The galaxy had turned its back on them, and yet, even in their exile, someone else was reaching out. She stood, her boots echoing against the metal floor, and walked down the narrow hallways. Soldiers straightened as she passed, but she did not stop. Families glanced at her with quiet hope, though they didn't know why. She walked with purpose until she reached the navigation chamber. Inside, a young navigator stared nervously at the star charts. The council's approved course glowed in green, a safe path that would take humanity far from council-controlled space, into the empty dark where no one cared what became of them. But hidden just beneath that green line was another route, one that twisted into a forbidden zone marked in red. The signal had come from there. She placed her hand on the console. Can we get there without the council knowing? The navigator hesitated. If we stay on their charts, yes. But if we divert, he paused, looking up at her. They'll know. And the fleets out there, they'll stop us. Maybe destroy us. She nodded slowly. The risk was clear. The council wanted them gone, but only on the council's terms. Any defiance would mean war. She lowered her voice. Plot a course into the dead zone. Do not activate it yet. Wait for my order. The navigator swallowed hard but obeyed, his fingers dancing across the console as the red path glowed faintly, like blood through a wound. Hours passed. The ship drifted forward, engines quiet, following the green line. The fleets outside still watched in silence, weapons armed but unmoving. The people inside sat close together, whispering, waiting. Children dozed in their parents' arms. Soldiers polished their rifles, even though they had been ordered not to use them. Every moment felt like the calm before a storm. Then it happened. The scarred officer gave the order. Divert course. Now. The navigator's hand shook as he pressed the command. The ship shuddered as the engines flared brighter, breaking away from the green line, sliding into the red. Instantly, alarms blared across the bridge. Outside, the fleet stirred. Massive alien warships shifted into motion, their weapons flaring to life, targeting the human vessel with cold precision. A voice crackled through the comms, sharp and commanding. "Human vessel, return to your assigned course. Now. This is your only warning." The officer's jaw tightened. She stepped forward, pressing the comms switch. Her voice was calm, steady, but filled with iron. "We will not return. We are answering a call for help." There was silence on the other end. Then the alien voice returned, colder than before. "There is no one to help. Return to your course, or be destroyed." The scarred officer shut the comms off. Around her, the bridge crew waited, tense and pale. The fleets outside began to close in, their weapons glowing brighter. But then, against all odds, the humans broke through. The transport's engines roared, pushing harder, faster, cutting between the massive alien ships before they could close their trap. Warning shots fired, streaks of light across the black, but none struck home. The human vessel dove into the red zone, vanishing from the scanners of the main fleets. Silence fell across the bridge. The crew looked at one another with wide eyes, as if they had just stolen life from death itself. The scarred officer only stared ahead, her gaze locked on the darkness of the forbidden system. Minutes stretched into hours as they moved deeper into the zone. The stars seemed dimmer here, the light weaker, as though the space itself had been abandoned. Then, at last, their sensors picked it up, a cluster of faint signals, hidden in the shadow of a broken world. As they drew closer, the truth became clear. The ruins of a once great civilization floated silently among shattered moons and broken stations. And nestled inside those ruins were survivors. Weak signals, damaged ships, but alive. The scarred officer leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the screen. For the first time since exile began, her voice carried something new. Not just defiance, but hope. "Bring us closer. They're waiting." And as the human ship descended into the ruins, the survivors stirred, sending their signals brighter, stronger. Voices filled the comms, trembling with disbelief and gratitude. "You came. You actually came." The galaxy had abandoned them. The Council had ordered them erased. But humanity had chosen differently. Humanity had come for them. And in that moment, a new bond was forged, one that no Council order could ever break. The Council chamber gleamed under cold white light, the polished walls reflecting the faces of the galaxy's most powerful leaders. The air was heavy with unease, though none of them admitted it aloud. The humans were gone, exiled and cast out like unwanted children. Yet something gnawed at the edges of their certainty. Reports had trickled in, fragmented, unclear, but troubling. The human vessel had not stayed on its assigned course. An insectoid delegate shifted uneasily in his seat, his antennae twitching. "They broke formation," he hissed. "Our fleets confirm it. The humans did not go where we told them. They entered restricted space." Across the chamber, another delegate, tall and robed in shimmering fabric, narrowed her eyes. "Then they know. Or at least, they suspect." A ripple of discontent ran through the chamber. The Council had worked tirelessly to bury the truth, to erase an entire people from memory. But now, the most dangerous species of all, the humans, had stumbled upon their secret. "They must not be allowed to interfere," another voice boomed, deep and commanding. "If the humans aid them, our plan will collapse." But not all in the chamber agreed. One alien, with skin like smooth stone and eyes like black glass, leaned forward. His voice was calm, but it cut through the noise like a blade. "Perhaps it is too late. If the humans have already made contact, the galaxy will know soon enough. We cannot silence them as easily as we silenced the others." The chamber fell into heavy silence. No one wanted to speak the truth out loud, but they all knew it. Humanity was dangerous not because of their weapons, not because of their strength, but because of their nature. They did not look away. They did not turn their backs. And once they had chosen to protect someone, nothing in the galaxy could sway them. Far from the chamber, aboard the human vessel, the survivors had begun to emerge from their ruined world. Weak, starved, their ships broken and failing, but alive. Their faces, strange and alien, with luminous eyes and fragile forms, lit up when they saw the humans. Hope flickered where before there had only been silence. In the command room, the scarred officer listened as their leader spoke through the comms. The voice trembled with relief. "We thought no one would come. The council told us we were forgotten. That no one would risk their lives for us." The officer's jaw tightened. She glanced at her crew, then spoke into the channel. "The council lied. Humanity doesn't abandon those who ask for help. Not now. Not ever." A murmur of pride rippled through the crew. They had been exiled, cast out, branded as dangerous and unpredictable. But in this moment, they were exactly what they had always been: defiant, stubborn, unwilling to bow. Yet even as they brought survivors aboard, shadows followed them. A coded message slipped into the human ship systems, hidden and sharp like a knife. It was a warning, but not from the council. The words appeared across the screen: "Do not trust everyone in the council. They are divided. Some are with you. Some are against you. Beware betrayal." The scarred officer read the words, her face hardening. She knew immediately what it meant. Somewhere within the council, lines were fracturing. Not all of them had agreed to the exile, not all of them had wanted the extinction of another race. But the betrayal cut both ways. If some stood with humanity, others would stop at nothing to destroy them. That night, as the ship drifted silently among the broken ruins, the officer stood alone at the viewport. Stars stretched endlessly before her, cold and distant. She thought of Earth, now far behind them. She thought of the council's chambers, filled with their polished lies. And she thought of the survivors who slept in the cargo bay, fragile and grateful, unaware that their presence might ignite a war across the stars. For the first time since exile, the officer allowed herself to whisper the truth aloud, her voice low enough that only the stars could hear. "This isn't about us anymore. It never was. This is about them, and what we are willing to do to protect them." The galaxy believed humanity had been cast aside, silenced, forgotten. But the galaxy had forgotten one thing: humans did not fear exile. They did not fear rejection. What they feared was leaving someone behind. And now, with survivors clinging to them and the council's web of lies unraveling, humanity was preparing for something far greater than exile. They were preparing for defiance. The betrayal had already begun. And soon, the entire galaxy would feel it. The void was never truly silent. Out here, in the cold between the stars, there was always the whisper of signals, the hum of engines, the faint pulse of energy fields stretching across light years. But now, silence had begun to spread, unnatural, heavy, terrifying. One by one, colonies across the galaxy were going dark. At first it seemed like accidents, a failure in communication relays, a solar storm knocking out the grids. But soon the pattern became clear. Entire systems had gone quiet. No trade ships. No outgoing signals. No survivors. Only silence. On board the human vessel, tension grew heavier with every report. Soldiers exchanged grim looks, engineers worked longer shifts, and families huddled together, whispering fears they dared not speak too loudly. Humanity had already been exiled, already marked as dangerous. And now, with colonies vanishing, whispers spread that it was their fault. The council made sure of it. Broadcasts went out across the galaxy, spoken in calm, official voices. The humans have defied their exile. They have entered forbidden space. Their actions bring destruction. Their presence is the cause of these disappearances. It was a lie, but a convincing one. And the galaxy was eager to believe. In the command room, the scarred officer slammed her fist against the console. "They're blaming us for this. Every vanished world, every dark system, they're putting it on humanity." The navigator's hands trembled as he adjusted the star maps. Red markers glowed brighter and brighter, each one a colony gone silent. "It's spreading faster," he said. "Not just border systems anymore. Core worlds are being hit. This isn't natural." The scarred officer leaned closer, her voice low but sharp. "Then who's behind it?" Before anyone could answer, the survivors they had rescued spoke. Their leader, a frail figure with luminous eyes, stepped forward. His voice was soft, but it carried weight. We know who it is. We tried to warn the council, but they silenced us. They erased us because we discovered the truth. The humans turned toward him, every face tense. The survivor's voice trembled as he continued. There is something in the void. Something older than your council, older than all of us. They feared it, but instead of fighting, they chose to hide. They marked us for extermination because we had seen it with our own eyes. And now it is coming. The words hung in the air like a shadow. No one spoke. No one moved. Then, slowly, the officer asked the only question that mattered. And what does it want? The survivor's luminous eyes glistened with fear. It does not want. It takes. It consumes. It leaves nothing behind. The crew exchanged horrified glances. They had been cast out of the galaxy, branded as dangerous, unpredictable. But now, as silence spread like a plague, it was clear the real danger had never been humanity. The danger was something else, something vast and merciless. Moments later, alarms blared across the ship. Sensors lit up, flashing red. Something massive was moving in the darkness ahead. Not a ship. Not a fleet. Something different. Something wrong. The officer's heart pounded as the screen filled with the image of a shadow larger than a moon, its surface shifting like smoke and fire. It moved without engines, without sound, but every sensor screamed its presence. The survivor whispered, almost too quiet to hear. It has found us. The human crew froze. The council had abandoned them. The galaxy had turned its weapons on them. And now, in the endless dark, the true enemy had finally revealed itself. But humanity did not run. Humanity did not surrender. Even as the void swallowed colony after colony, even as the council spread lies to cover their betrayal, the scarred officer stood tall and gave her command. Prepare weapons. Prepare defenses. We are not leaving them to die. And for the first time since exile began, the humans and the survivors they had saved stood together, side by side, staring into the abyss. The galaxy had rejected them both. But now, only together, they might survive. The silence of the void deepened, pressing against the ship like a weight. Out there, something ancient and hungry waited. The council could pretend it did not exist. The other species could lie to themselves and call humanity the threat. But the truth was already here, written in the black between the stars. And humanity had made their choice. They would not abandon those who needed them. Not to the council. Not to exile. Not to the endless hunger waiting in the void. They would fight. And the galaxy would finally see what it meant when humanity refused to turn away. The void lit up with fire. Human engines roared louder than thunder, streaking blue light through the black as the transport ship shed its disguise of exile and revealed its true purpose. The vessel had been built for survival, but hidden deep within its hull were weapons the council never expected humans to use again. Now, those weapons came alive. The shadow in the dark loomed closer, its surface shifting like smoke and stone, a living mass that swallowed light itself. It had no clear form, no shape the eye could hold. Every time the crew tried to focus, it seemed to twist, to writhe, as if the void itself were alive. And from within it, pulses of energy lashed out, slamming into the ruins around them, tearing apart the broken fragments of moons that drifted silently through the dead system. The ship shook under the first strike. Metal groaned, alarms screamed, children cried out in fear. But the scarred officer's voice cut through it all, sharp and steady. Hold your stations. Fire control, ready torpedoes. Target that thing's energy pulses. The gunners hesitated. What if it can't be hurt? Then we'll find out the hard way, she snapped. Missiles launched into the dark, streaks of fire vanishing into the shadow. For a moment there was nothing, just silence, just darkness. Then, the void erupted. The mass shuddered violently as explosions rippled across its surface. Not damage. Not destruction. But a reaction. The creature, if it could even be called that, had felt them. And now, it turned its full attention on humanity. The next strike came harder. A wave of energy like a tidal surge swept across space, smashing into the human ship's shields. The hull screamed, sparks burst from consoles, and men and women were thrown to the floor. The navigator shouted over the chaos, shields are holding, but barely. Divert power from secondary systems, the officer barked. Keep us alive. The survivors huddled in the cargo bays felt the tremors, their glowing eyes wide with terror. They whispered in their own tongue, old words of fear and warning. One of them pressed his hands together and whispered, "It is the same. The same as before. It will consume them too." But humans were not like the council. Humans were not like the ones who had turned their backs. Instead of retreating, the humans pushed forward. Fighters launched from hidden hangars, smaller craft darting through the void like sparks of defiance. They swarmed the shadow, firing volleys of energy and missiles into the shifting dark. Each blast lit the creature for a heartbeat, revealing glimpses of its size, its endless mass, its unholy hunger. The officer watched the battle unfold, her hands gripping the railing so tightly her knuckles turned white. She knew they could not win in open combat. Not like this. But that wasn't the point. The point was to hold the line, to fight long enough for the survivors to escape, to show the galaxy what humans did when faced with the impossible. A comms officer shouted suddenly, his voice high with shock. "We're receiving transmissions from other ships." The officer turned sharply. "Council fleets. No. Independents. Traders. Mercenaries. A few from border systems. They heard the signal we boosted, they're coming here." The officer's lips curled into the faintest shadow of a smile. Even exiled, even hated, humanity's defiance had drawn others. The galaxy was watching, and some had chosen to stand with them. The shadow struck again, lashing out with tendrils of energy that wrapped around a fighter and crushed it into nothing. The pilot's scream echoed across the comms before cutting to static. For a moment, silence gripped the human crew, grief settling like lead. But then another pilot's voice cut through, filled with fire. "We don't stop. We don't break. Hit it again." The officer gave the order. "All batteries, full barrage. Show it who we are." The void blazed with light as every weapon unleashed at once. Torpedoes streaked, cannons roared, and the shadow convulsed under the storm. It was not victory. It was survival bought with blood. But for the first time, the creature recoiled, pulling back slightly as if confused by the ferocity of its prey. On the bridge, the scarred officer's gaze hardened. Humanity had been exiled. Humanity had been rejected. But humanity was still here, still fighting, still protecting. And now the galaxy would see it for themselves. Because even in the face of an ancient hunger, even when the Council's fleet stood ready to brand them villains, the humans did what they had always done. They fought for those who could not fight for themselves. They held the line. And in the endless void, fire raged against the dark. The battle did not end with fire. It only grew. The void shook as the shadow stretched wider, unfolding like wings made of smoke and lightning. It was no single creature, no simple beast. It was a tide, a storm made alive, and every second it swelled larger. The human ship shuddered under the strain. Hull plates buckled, sparks rained down from ceiling panels, and medics rushed through smoke-filled corridors carrying the wounded. Every deck felt the weight of the fight, but no one abandoned their post. Humanity had been cast out, but in this moment, exile meant nothing. They were warriors. They were protectors. And they would stand. The survivors, huddled in the lower decks, felt the shift in the ship's rhythm. They saw the determination in human eyes, the refusal to break. Their leader, frail and pale, whispered to his people, "Do you see them? They do not run. They do not leave us as the Council did. They stand." On the bridge, the scarred officer leaned over the tactical display, jaw set hard. "How long can shields hold?" The navigator's voice cracked. "Minutes. Maybe less." "Then make every minute count." The comms officer interrupted, eyes wide. "Multiple ships incoming. Council fleets." The crew stiffened. Betrayal hung heavy in the air. But then the officer asked the only question that mattered. "Weapons hot?" The comms officer shook his head. "No. They're just watching." Dozens of Council ships lingered at the system's edge, holding position. Their weapons glimmered but did not fire. They would not help, but they would not interfere. They were waiting to see if humanity burned. Rage flared in the officer's chest, but she bit it back. Let them watch. Let them see what humans were made of. Bring us in close, she ordered. The helmsman swallowed hard but obeyed. Engines roared, pushing the battered ship directly into the storm's heart. Tendrils lashed out, tearing at their hull, dragging them toward the endless dark. The shadow pulsed with hunger. One more surge and it would consume them whole. Now, the officer shouted. Every weapon fired. Torpedoes, cannons, railguns, even emergency thrusters overloaded to burn as weapons. The void exploded with light. Fighters dove through the chaos, unleashing their payloads in desperate, suicidal runs. One by one they were struck down, but each left fire in their wake. The shadow screamed. Not in sound, but in vibration, a pulse of hate and hunger that rattled bones and made hearts seize in terror. Lights flickered, metal warped, and still the humans fought. On the observation decks of council ships, leaders and soldiers watched in silence. They had branded humanity dangerous. They had cast them out. Yet here they were, fighting an enemy no one else dared to face, holding the line while others cowered. Inside the human ship, the officer stood tall though blood ran from a cut across her brow. Her voice was iron as she gave the command that would seal their fate. Prepare the core overload. Gasps rippled across the bridge. One engineer stammered, that will kill us all. It might kill it too, she said, her voice steady. And if it doesn't, at least the survivors will escape. We will not abandon them. Ever. Silence fell. Then, one by one, the crew nodded. No hesitation. No fear. Humanity had always been stubborn. Now, that stubbornness became sacrifice. The survivors above felt the shift. They saw humans choosing death to give others life. Tears filled their luminous eyes. One of them whispered, "No one has ever done this for us." As the countdown began, the shadow surged again, wrapping its tendrils around the ship, pulling it into its maw. Lights flickered out. Hull beams snapped like brittle bone. The end was seconds away. But in those seconds, humanity roared. Every weapon still burning, every soul still fighting, every heartbeat defiant. The officer stood at the center, her gaze locked on the dark. She did not flinch. She did not bow. And then, light. The core unleashed a storm brighter than a sun. Energy tore through the void, burning against the shadow, ripping at its endless form. Council ships shielded their eyes, their senses overwhelmed. The survivors screamed in awe and fear as the void itself seemed to ignite. When the blaze faded, silence fell. The human ship was gone. Nothing remained but wreckage and fire. The shadow writhed in the distance, torn but not destroyed, retreating into the endless black. The council fleets did not move. They simply watched the silence where humans had made their stand. And in the lower decks of one lifeboat, drifting among wreckage, the survivors huddled together. They were alive. Alive because humanity had chosen to fight for them. Alive because humans had refused to abandon them. Their leader, voice breaking with emotion, whispered words that carried like fire in the cold. They gave everything. Not for themselves. For us. The survivors' eyes turned toward the stars. The humans were gone. But their defiance was not. Their sacrifice was not. And across the galaxy, whispers began. Whispers that the council had lied. Whispers that humanity, the outcasts, had faced the darkness when no one else would. Whispers that the story was not over. Because even in death, humanity's fire still burned. Debris floated through the void like ashes scattered across a black sea. Pieces of metal drifted in silence, torn fragments of the human ship glowing faintly with dying sparks. To anyone watching, it looked like the end. Humanity had burned itself out in one final blaze, consumed by the very storm it sought to stop. The council fleets lingered at the system's edge. They did not fire, they did not move, they only watched. Some whispered relief. Others whispered fear. None spoke aloud, the truth rising in their hearts. The humans had done what no one else dared. Among the wreckage, a single pod drifted, nearly invisible in the darkness. Inside, the survivors clung to life, their luminous eyes filled with both grief and awe. They had expected abandonment, death, silence. Instead, they had been given sacrifice. Every face was lit by the memory of humans standing tall, refusing to bend even as the void swallowed them. Their leader placed a trembling hand against the pod's cold glass, whispering words no translator could capture. Yet their meaning was clear in every tear shed around him. Humanity had not just saved them. Humanity had proven something greater, that exile could not break their spirit, that rejection could not erase their defiance. But silence never lasted in the void. From the edge of wreckage came a faint signal. Weak. Fragmented. A code tapped in old frequencies, one used long before the Council ever ruled. The survivors stiffened, eyes wide, as the pod systems translated the broken message. Not all, lost, hold, line. Hope sparked like fire in the cold. Somewhere, somehow, fragments of the human crew had survived. Far beyond, in the council chambers, panic spread. Reports poured in. The shadow had not been destroyed, only driven back. It lingered at the edge of systems, watching, waiting. And now whispers traveled faster than light, whispers of human sacrifice, of fire that held the dark at bay. Worlds began to question the council's lies. Colonies wondered if exile had been a mistake. Soldiers asked themselves why the outcasts had stood when the council had hidden. Fear turned inward. Authority cracked. The survivors' pod was eventually recovered, not by the council, but by a ragged band of independents who had seen the battle from afar. These were traders, smugglers, outlaws, people who had never trusted the council's rule. They listened to the survivors' story, their eyes hardening, their voices rising. The humans saved you. The humans fought the darkness. And the council did nothing. A seed was planted that day, one no fleet could erase. A seed of rebellion, of memory, of defiance. And far away, in the shadow between stars, broken human ships drifted. Wrecked hulls burned, shattered steel floated, but within the wreckage, a handful of escape crafts still pulsed with life. Engines weak, power failing, but alive. The scarred officer sat among her surviving crew, blood drying on her face, eyes fixed on the dark horizon. "They think we're gone," she said softly. Her voice was hoarse, but her gaze burned with the same fire as before. "Let them think it. The galaxy will believe the Council's lies. The shadow will believe it has won. But we are not finished. Not while that thing still waits in the dark. Not while anyone needs us." Her crew nodded, battered but unbroken. And so the humans vanished from sight, not destroyed, but hidden, watching, waiting, preparing. Their story became a whisper across the stars, carried by survivors, spread by rebels, feared by the Council. A whisper that grew stronger with every passing day. Humanity had been cast out. Humanity had been rejected. But in the end, it did not matter. Because humanity had done what they always did, they fought, they sacrificed, they endured. And somewhere in the endless dark, where shadows moved like storms, humanity's fire still burned, waiting for the day it would rise again. Because the galaxy had not seen the last of them. Not yet.